What is up, everybody? You're very welcome along to today's show. As you can see, I've got a very special guest. In my mind, one of the greatest pundits in his era, especially when it comes to Spanish football. I'm joined by the legend that is Mr. Graham Hunter. How are you, sir?
Well, thank you. As you can see, I'm treating this with the laid-back kind of sang-froid that's needed. I'm on my couch. It's Barcelona early evening, and I'm pleased to be chatting to you again.
Always lovely to catch up. It's been a really crazy transfer window. When we signed Thiago, there was only one person I had in mind who I wanted to speak to about it. And I just wanted to ask you quickly, Graham, were you surprised to see Liverpool's interest in Thiago, particularly with his age bracket?
I would say not surprised about the initial interest. Only surprised, if anything, about the fact that, given that Bayern made it absolutely clear that they wanted to keep, and Thiago went on Spain duty and playing well, said, "Look, don't be trying to push me out of the club as you are every summer." It was obviously a deal, Craig, that needed work. So you asked specifically about the fact that he's 30. From my outside point of view, one of the things that you've got, let's double it. Two of the things that are painting there is that this is a squad that's built on huge athleticism. It's certainly one of the elements that has meant that Liverpool's been able to be dominant in Europe for the last 3 seasons. They should have gone through against Atletico Madrid. I'd like to have seen Liverpool in the final. Things got in the way, but the 2 previous seasons, a final and a win. Hauling back Manchester City, steamrolling the opposition. Athleticism and muscularity is a central part of their identity. And secondly, right across the squad, including arrivals, there's a mentality, really tungsten tough, not easily satisfied. And I think that if you apply those things, then you look at what can be added. And I think that it's probably in my lifetime, I'm not saying they invented the template, but Shankly and the boot room that followed him, or the boot room graduates that followed him, always talked about how to buy when you're on top, when to buy. And I think that if you add more of the same at Liverpool, then it's probably going to be no better than par. And I think if you wanted to be, and I obviously I've been watching the US Open, if you wanted to be under par and ahead of the game, then to add some technique, some can opener skills, as they say here in Spain, abrir la lata, somebody who can, as defences increasingly say, we're going to pack against you and see if you run out of steam. The idea of bringing Thiago in general was no surprise to me because he's got those talents, clearly. He's got European winning experience. He's now got 2 Champions Leagues under his belt. That helps too. I think the thing that meant my answer is no in terms of surprise is that you've got a very motivated man, and he comes from good stock. Obviously, people know that Messi won the World Cup in '94, but I've met Messi, talked to him. I've met Rafinha and Thiago, and the motivation level, the determination to continue to extend themselves, to test their abilities, to see no horizons. I think that fits in with the way in which Klopp, but also your scouting department that I speak about often, understood that this was a guy who embodied things that could be additional to what you already had. So I know your point was 30-year-old, but then, it's been, the message from Liverpool has been coordinated and clear about it, that they felt that they could responsibly spend. And therefore, you don't get a 26-year-old of Thiago's ability for the price that you paid for the Bayern Munich midfielder. And therefore, if you put all those pieces together, the jigsaw fits really quite nicely, I think.
One thing that stands out to me is every relationship that he's had with managers and former clubs, they speak nothing but glowing in terms of how he is as a person, how he trains, how he goes about his business. And we've only got to see 45 minutes of him on the pitch from a Liverpool perspective, but you can see that Barcelona background. You can see that, if I'm right, he rocked up to La Masia at 14 years of age and was in the first team 4 years later. You can see that Barcelona pedigree within him.
I accept that, and I think that you'd also want to think a little bit about his father, where his father played, how his father played, what his father thought the ball was for. This is something that probably, in mentality terms, Craig, predates training in Football Club Barcelona, living in Pedralbes. I think we were on the first floor, they were on the sixth, 5 floors above me. My daughter, who just walked through the living room here out of camera shot, was a 1-year-old asleep on a little nice conglomeration of rugs and baby blankets just before the balcony when Thiago and his brother and a few mates, aged 15, 14, 13, were leaping into our swimming pool down below in the community area and making a noise. I leaned out the balcony and gave them the fucking bollocking of their lifetime without knowing who they were. I don't know how many times I've had to apologise to them both for that, but here's another chance if Thiago or Rafinha happen to be watching this. So I take your point that the good habits, the idea of timing of a game, positioning, the use of the ball. I take your point that it looks like the era that you admired of Football Club Barcelona, where from Guardiola taking over, he re-energised the contributions that Piqué and Xavi and Iniesta were making. He pushed Busquets into the first team, and Thiago, while one side of the story is saying he felt he eventually had to leave in order to get more first team football, he pushed them hard. There are many people at Barcelona at the time who thought he should have stayed, easily should have stayed. And now, if you look at the athleticism that Sergio Busquets is showing, Thiago could have stayed and would now be the dominant midfielder next to Frankie de Jong. I agree with you, Craig, that I worry a little bit that, you know, the performance against Chelsea was one which was kind of tailor-made for Thiago. Everybody's gone crazy about the fact that, what was the stat? He passed the ball more than, what was it, any other Chelsea player in 90 minutes?
I think it was 75 passes in 45 minutes.
Ever combined. And nobody's done that in the history of the Premier League, apparently, some such thing. Look, I think the level of the seriousness that you apply to debating styles of play, signings, Liverpool's chances in particular tournaments, there needs to be not a caution, but a different way of viewing Thiago, because people's reaction to how he played at Stamford Bridge is like saying Thiago is spelled Thiago. We knew the things that he did. I think where he's essential, where his contribution can elevate Liverpool, I hope, because I'm a big fan of him as a person and as a footballer too, is that he's got a sense of daring, and he's got Liverpool's range of passing, let's say from their third of the pitch across 2/3. Like, for example, the ball that Henderson played into, was it Mane for the red card? That length of ball and another 15, 20 yards beyond it, Liverpool are masters at that. And I'm not calling them a counter-attack team, but the ability to use the ball to one of the rampaging forwards or one of the fullbacks overlapping, that's a real trademark of how Liverpool play. Thiago could do that. But where I'm most interested is when either it's an ebb and flow game and he receives the ball and distributes it in a way that looks as if he hasn't looked, but actually he's taken a snapshot picture 2, 3, 4 seconds beforehand, and the ball goes away quickly in the other area. And he didn't have to do that against Chelsea. It wasn't, Chuckle Brothers football, to me, to you, to me, to you. The other area is when you get really properly, not just packed defences, but really organised defences. can Thiago play like a 10, like a proper 10 there, and split little spaces, play little five-a-side futsal football where the ball pings around really quickly in a 10-metre space outside the edge of the opposition penalty area, and Thiago either draws a man or makes the pass or starts the tempo of passing that opens defences up. And I think that will be, we're not just talking about potentially can he win matches, can he turn the balance in favour of Liverpool sufficiently quickly that rather than producing a fabulous burst of tiny indoor football in the last 10 minutes to win a match 3-2 where the opposition have been banked and won't give it, can he do that earlier in games so that Klopp's got more chance of saying, this game's opened up, we've opened up a packed defence, so now they've come out, so I can change the 11 that I've got on the pitch, I can use the bench differently. Thiago on form and doing what he's bought for, I think, in my opinion, opens up a host of different possibilities for Liverpool, which is why it's exciting. And I'd only say, going back to your previous point, he is a footballer who takes risks. And the comparison I make is that, I think in almost every year of Leo Messi's stats in La Liga, the player who's given the ball away most, lost the ball most, been robbed of the ball most, is Leo Messi. Because he's constantly trying things, either with the ball at his feet or in how he uses the ball. It's just that in the times that it comes off, he's scored, 630 goals. And therefore, there will be times, there are definitely going to be times when Thiago risks something because he's got a really still, you talked about seeing in him the Barcelona 2010, 2011, 2012 model. He's also got real Brazilian blood in him about, I'll risk something, I'll try something, which is obviously hugely effective as part of his game. But sometimes that won't come off. And because he's used to, I think he's used to a slightly more controlled level of football at Bayern Munich. I think that English football is still slightly more raucous. There'll be more attempts to press him, rob him. And occasionally, just simply because of the nature of his game, that will happen. And I don't think he's now any longer the fastest. So if you're robbed, about half back and maybe put in a defining tackle. So Klopp will look to complement what Thiago's asked to do with the players that play around him. I'm absolutely sure about that. And one word, Craig, that we don't use often enough in chats like this is, I think you and all Liverpool fans are going to enjoy yourselves. I know it's about winning. I know it's about saying, what have we got in this nice surprise summer package, and how quickly can we unwrap it. But I honestly think he's going to add style and panache and, I hope, enjoyment.
I want to ask you something from the Barcelona side, and it's a kind of double-edged question. I was getting a bit worried as this dragged on that maybe we'll see Barcelona sign him on a pre-contract in January if Liverpool couldn't get the deal over the line. Was there much interest from Barca's side, and how are things looking right now? Because I'm reading stories about finances of La Liga club being in all sorts of trouble, money having to be repaid back to La Liga from loans and stuff. Are Spanish clubs going to struggle financially?
A lot of questions packed into one there, Craigie boy. The first thing to say, I don't think you
got to make the most of you while you're here, Graham.
Barcelona are a shambles in the board level and in the football department. Not necessarily, Kylian's having an impact already, and with Ansu on form and Griezmann played in the right position and De Jong restored to Pivote, they're not going to win the title. They're not going to win the Champions League, but it can certainly look quicker, healthier, maybe a little bit younger than it did last season. I think their resources at Barcelona are very low because they've let Rakitic go, they've let Vidal go. There's a stream of youngish players who could be stepping into the first team that have been pushed out. So it's going to be tumultuous. It's obvious what will happen over the next 6 months is wrong. I think it's relatively obvious that it's going to be choppy, and there's going to be occasions when Barcelona aren't equipped to cope with 3 games a week. When we come to Champions League and the midweek matches, because Barcelona have had to start 3 weeks late in the season. In my opinion, Craig, it's going to be a bumpy season, but it can be a step forward for Football Club Barcelona. And why they didn't go for Thiago, they have no money at the moment to sign anybody. The president is out, but if you're talking about a pre-contract from Bayern and asking him to wait at the end of to the end of next season and leave free, Barcelona right now, the president and the Ramon Planes, the director of football, they're not thinking that far ahead, because they're going to be elections planned now for March, and this board must leave in the summer. So short-termism, which I think has been dominant since about late 2015, is now rampant. What can I get out of the last 8 months? The idea of there being some deep forward-thinking strategy beyond getting through with as few financial losses and as close to a sniff of a trophy as possible by June. That's all that's consuming the suits at Barcelona right now. And that's not a healthy mix in terms of making shrewd decisions, having properly planned sales and purchases. It's pretty fucking chaotic, to be honest with you. And therefore, Thiago, I don't think ever was a possibility to come back to Alcantara, which again, I think is a big shame. Vidal's gone, he's gone. The pushing at Pivote, they were playing a 4-2-3-1. They have Busquets, Pjanic, and De Jong. After which, it becomes a little bit interesting to see who would play there. And Thiago, I think, in normal circumstances, had he gone to Camp Nou instead of Anfield, would have been right there next to De Jong, and it would have been a dynamic, really interesting, enjoyable partnership. But you won the race, and kudos to you.
Yeah, and I'm going to take that one, Graham. Look, I know you're a very, very busy man. I'm not going to keep you. I want to say I'm looking forward to a new season on La Liga TV with yourself and the gang over there as well. I'm looking forward to the latest editions of the big interview with Graham Hunter. And I thank you so much, Graham, for giving up your time. I know how busy you must be at the minute, so I'll let you get back to your afternoon. But again, from all of us, thank you, mate, for being a good friend to the channel. We really appreciate you coming on.
No, it's a massive pleasure, and I meant what I said before. I like this. I spoke to one of your staff about Thiago 4 or 5 days ago, and he said, whoa, this guy is a class act. I think that another thing that we haven't said to say goodbye is that you've got a guy you're going to be proud of having wearing your strip. He's bright, he's got brilliant English. I think that he's a real competitor, and in the future, when you're still doing this, there'll be young kids who are in the first team squad at the moment or coming through an academy who'll be singing 4 or 5 years, yeah, I watched Thiago every day. I watched him do this. I watched him say this. I watched how lean he was. I watched how multilingual he was. I watched how he controlled games, how he treated the ball. And you'll have kids saying he was an inspiration to me. You throw quality into the mix like that, and you get the quality ripples, I think. So it's a pleasure talking to you, and enjoy your football. Enjoy Thiago.
Thank you very much, sir. Have a lovely afternoon, Graham, and thank you again.
You as well. It's a pleasure. Mind yourself. Take care.